What's up, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Scyushi and we are back with more Genshin Impact. Yes, that's right, in our Genshin video today, because while we have had the official announcement talking about version 2.4 and showing off the new area and all that beautiful stuff, we ended up seeing the new characters, which means that I'm allowed to talk about them. So I already ended up putting out my video talking about Shenhe, all of her Ascension Materials and how her skills work and stuff. So this video is going to be focusing on Yun Jin, who is going to end up being the new 4-star character added to the game. Now, the interesting thing is that while Yun Jin is going to end up having an increased drop chance in Shenhe's banner, which is scheduled for January 4th, 2022, Yun Jin will actually be obtained for free during the Lantern Rite event. So you can obtain her or a bunch of other 4-star characters, but we're going to run down how her character works and so on and so forth. She's a bit of a weird character for sure. But first and foremost, for those of you that just want the information, bomb, there you go. That's going to end up being the Ascension Materials. I'll have a link in the description so you can download that and move on respectively. But for those of you that want all of the info of how her abilities work and so on and so forth, stick around because we're going to get into it. So according to Honey Impact, Yun Jin's Ascension Material is going to be the horn that you can end up getting from the Golden Wolf Lord, which is a really cursed boss because you need to use a lot of Geo characters in order to end up fighting it. But anyways, let's get into Yun Jin's abilities. So first, talking about Yun Jin's elemental skill, which has both a click and a hold, which is similar to Zhongli, where you can click or you can end up holding to end up having different functionalities. Other characters do this as well, but it's interesting how they actually just call it click and hold. But anyways, so the click ability for Yun Jin is going to be Flourishes, her spear in the cloud grazing form, dealing geo damage. So that's all it's going to end up doing. It's just it deals geo damage. And then the hold ability takes up the whirling opener stance and charges up, forming a shield. Damage absorption is based off of Yun Jin's max HP and absorbs all elemental damage and physical damage 150% more effectively. Now, I wanted to mention something very briefly here, because while it says that this skill is scaling off of Yun Jin's HP, the developer, when he was talking during the live stream, said that it scaled off of her defense, and it makes more sense to me that her skill would end up scaling off of defense. So I'm assuming that this is just an old typo that they will more than likely rectify when she ends up going live. However, maybe it does scale off of HP, which wouldn't really make that much sense because the way her other abilities work, she actually scales off of defense, as you'll see momentarily. So anyways, when the skill is unleashed, its duration ends, or when the shield breaks, Yun Jin will unleash the stored energy as an attack, dealing geo damage. Based on the time spent charging it, it will either unleash an attack at level 1 or level 2, charge level 1 and charge level 2. So if we look at the stats themselves, you can see the press damage and then the charge level 1 and 2 damage, whereas the shield damage absorption again says it's based off of HP. I mean, maybe it is based off of HP, but I just find it really weird because that means this is going to end up being one of the first characters in Genshin Impact where you're going to be focusing on 2 main attributes, which is defense for her offense and then HP for her defense. It's a very weird character, but maybe that is going to end up being how it is, and maybe it isn't necessarily a typo. Maybe her shield does actually in fact scale off of HP, which is going to be very strange. So moving on to her ultimate ability, it deals area of effect geo damage and grants all nearby party members a flying cloud flag formation. So the flying cloud flag formation has the following effect. When normal attack damage is dealt to opponents, bonus damage will be dealt based on Yun Jin's current defense. This effect, the effect of this skill will be cleared after a set duration or a specific number of stacks are consumed. When one normal attack hits multiple opponents, stacks of this skill will be consumed according to the number of opponents hit. Each member of the party will have these effects and their stacks counted independently. Independent stacks. That just means that you could basically use her burst and then you would use all your characters in sequence, expending all of the stacks, which would ultimately, she's just going to end up buffing the entire party. So it's really cool that they've been doing stuff like this, because Shenhe has a similar mechanic. And I think that it's neat that they're kind of having characters only now, after a long year into this game's development, they're starting to have characters that kind of augment the entire group, similar to Bennett, where his ult ends up, you know, making everyone's burst good. This seems like it's going to end up giving him a run for his money. I mean, obviously Bennett can end up scaling really, really well, but it depends how much you could end up scaling Yun Jin's defense. I'm really excited to see the ramifications of these characters, even if I don't necessarily end up trying to level up or go for either of them. So moving on to Yun Jin's passive talents. So the normal attack bonus granted by Flying Cloud Flag formation is further increased by, and then it says a bunch of different percentages based on Yun Jin's defense when the party contains characters of 1, 2, 3, 4 element types, which I assume they mean different elemental types. So she is going to be a weirdo character where she's going to benefit the most by having 4 completely different elemental characters, or it's saying by having the same elemental characters. Right. I'm not entirely sure. I'm going to have to wait until she ends up going live. Based on the image, though, showing like a Geo, Electro, and Fire character icon and stuff, I would assume that it means it wants you to have as much varied characters as possible, which is going to end up being a pretty significant damage buff, you know, depending on how that ends up working. So anyways, there's also going to end up being the other passive using Whirlwind Opener, which Whirlwind Opener again is going to end up being her E ability. Using Whirlwind Opener at the precise moment when Yun Jin is attacked will unleash its level 2 charged, or the hold form. So I guess, I don't know, I guess that's just interesting. She kind of seems to have a little bit of a counter similar to Bedeau. Her passive, her last passive ability is when cooking, when perfect cooking is achieved on food with adventure related effects, there is a 12% chance of obtaining double that product. I'm sorry, I'm kind of tripping over my tongue today. But anyways, that's going to end up doing it for her passive abilities. Now let's move on to her constellations. So her first constellation, her C1, is going to end up making the cooldown of her Whirlwind Opener, which again, the Whirlwind Opener is going to end up being her E ability. That is going to end up having a cooldown reduction of 18%, which is pathetic. I don't know why they say 18%, so I'm actually looking at the abilities cooldown, which is 9 seconds, and it seems that 18% of 9 is going to be 1.62, so I don't know why they don't just say 1.6 seconds. I guess they're trying to act like this constellation's better than it is. I don't know, that's kind of weird, but maybe it's got to do with the fact that her hold is going to end up having a longer cooldown. Either way, that is the most lackluster C1 I've ever seen in existence. Her C2, characters under the effects of the Flying Cloud Flag formation deal 2% increased normal attack damage after their normal attacks hit opponents. So you would have to hit an enemy first and then you end up dealing even more damage. This effect can be triggered once every 0.3 seconds with max stacks of 10. This effect lasts until the Flying Cloud formation effects are cleared or reset. So that, on top of all of the other stacks and stuff, could end up being really, really powerful, actually, which is surprising. Her C3 makes it so that her Cliffbreaker banner, which is going to end up being her ultimate ability, is going to end up leveling up. And then her C4, when Yun Jin triggers the crystallization reaction, her defense is increased by 20% for 12 seconds. Again, the fact that she scales off of her defense, that's a pretty decent constellation. Her C5 makes it so that her Whirling Opener, which is her E ability, ends up leveling up a couple extra levels. And then her C6, characters under the effects of the Flying Cloud Flag formation have their normal attack speed increased by 12%. That can be cracked, because having her just normal attack speed increase is always a really big deal on a lot of different characters. But anyways, let's get into how you're going to end up building this chick. So I guess just for coolness sake, they have her banner showing the Dragon's Bane spear, just because this spear looks really cool, but I don't know why you would ever want to use Elemental Mastery on a Geo character, let alone increases damage against opponents affected by Hydro or Pyro. But anyways, whatever, let's get into it. So obviously her spear would probably end up working very well with Shenhe's new spear, which is this one right here. But generally speaking, you're going to be using, I guess, just defensive stuff with with Shenhe, which we don't currently have a defensive spear near as I can tell that has a defense substat. I could be wrong on that just because I don't have the spear. But I would say that you could end up building her towards physical damage with the pike, as well as Dragon Spine Spear. But generally speaking, as a rule of thumb, I would say you're going to be going for either Deathmatch, Black Cliff, possibly the catch just for the sake of the energy recharge, and then otherwise for 5-star spears, I mean, pick your poison. Any of them's gonna end up being good. Staff of Homa's good. Skyward Spine has energy recharge. Engulfing Lightning, I mean, it depends if you even have one of the 5-star spears. Generally speaking, I'd say she probably is going to end up shining if you either have a spear with attack percentage or energy recharge, just because you're going to be wanting to cast her ability as often as possible based off of the fact that she is going to end up buffing the entire team. Now, moving on to artifacts, there's a couple different options you could do. You could be going for, I don't know, a Gladiator set, just because it's going to end up giving you that increased attack percentage. A Noblesse set would possibly end up helping her out with the entire group and your ultimate ability, but I highly doubt it. Generally speaking, I'd say you're probably going to end up using the Petra set, just because of the way that it ends up, you know, giving you elemental crystallization shields and blah blah blah, more damage bonus, so on and so forth. Or more than likely, based on the fact that she scales off defense, you're going to be going for the recent set which was added to the game, which is the Husk set, because the 2-piece set gives you a defense buff, while the 4-piece set makes it so that you basically will end up gaining stacks, which generally ends up increasing your defense as well as your geo damage bonus. Now, for the Sands, you're probably going to be wanting to go for defense main stat, possibly an HP main stat. It really depends on how you want to end up building this character. If you're using Yun Jin as 100% support, you're probably going to be trying to use a cross between defense and HP rather than giving her any type of offensive capabilities. So I would suggest for the Sands, you're probably going to want defense. You could also mix an energy recharge in there. It's entirely up to you. The Goblet is either going to be geo damage, defense, or or energy recharge. I don't know. She's a really weird character, but generally speaking, you're probably going to do your best bet by having just geo damage in general. And then for the hat, once again, you're either going to be wanting to go for crit rate, crit damage, or defense, or energy recharge. It depends how you want to end up using her, but generally speaking, it seems like she's going to end up being very much fine-tuned towards support rather than being a DPS character. But that's my 2 cents towards it. Now, anyways, I think that pretty much covers it. So hopefully you ended up finding this video helpful, and hopefully I didn't miss anything, but maybe I did. I mean, she's a bit of a weirder character. Shenhe is a little bit more straightforward. Yun Jin is kind of stranger. Not to mention, a lot of the info that I have is not necessarily 100% accurate. So we'll just have to kind of wait and see when she ends up coming out, but at least we'll all be able to get her for free. So hopefully this was helpful to you. Thanks for watching. Smash like, sub for more, buy the merch you want to support the channel, and have yourselves a wonderful day, everybody.